while we get that. There we go. So welcome everyone. Welcome to our Urban Collaborative Collab Talk. We are thrilled to see you all here and look forward to an engaging hour-long conversation. Before we start, let me introduce myself. I am Ruchika Chopra and I work with the Urban Collaborative. I am here along with my colleagues, Lauren Katzman and Catherine Benedict. We will be facilitating this collab talk. We will keep an eye out for questions that you may have for our presenter and answer any urban collaborative related questions. Let me remind you that we will be recording this session and will have it available for you or your colleagues to review after today. So once again, welcome. Any questions, technical or otherwise, before we move on? While the presentation's happening, we encourage you to put your questions in the chat. We'll take the questions after the presentation is completed so that we can allow for our presenter to share all that they have to share with you. So what is our presentation about today? This fall, if some of you were there, our fall member meeting was, the theme around it was How Are the Children? Stories of Youth Empowerment. One of our district presenters who was unable to join us was Stephanie Morgan Harris. Stephanie is currently the Supervisor of Student Support Services at Kankakee School District 111 in Illinois. It is their work in Kankakee around how they're supporting students in building resilience and becoming empowered youth that Stephanie is here to share with us today. Stephanie has had an impressive career spanning diverse roles of being a principal, an academic advisor, English language arts and social studies instructional coach, and a teacher. In all these roles, she has consistently demonstrated her commitment to student success and empowerment. We are thrilled to have Stephanie here, and we welcome Stephanie to our Collab Talk, where the theme of her presentation is That One Kid, Building Resilience in Children of Trauma. Stephanie?
Good afternoon, everybody. How is everybody doing today? Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. This is an amazing opportunity, and I'm excited about the information that we're going to join in community today and engage in conversation around. So recently, I was a part of the Urban Collaborative podcast, and I shared a lot about my personal trauma and childhood experience. And in that, birthed a lot of the methodology and praxis around the way I approach building relationships and addressing students who are impacted by adverse childhood experiences. So with that, we're going to engage in a conversation entitled That One Kid. So as we go forward in our agenda for today, there are three major nuggets that we're going to draw out of today's conversation. So the first one is grounding us in a getting to know you activity. In order to build relationships with students, we have to be grounded in our own identity and grounded in our perspectives and really do the work of peeling back those layers of who we are so that we are able to share our stories and be transparent with our children and the students that we impact. The next one is, it's all about the culture. Yes, it's all about the culture. Fostering cultures of acceptance and developing consistency in our active listening and engagement skills. Then we're going to discuss implore the restore. So I'm going to implore that you incorporate restorative practices and approaches to culture and discipline, because that's how we build relationship, especially with children of trauma. And so as we move forward in today's discussion, the first thing, as I said, we're going to ground ourselves in a getting to know you activity. So we are all the intersections of various different identities. So as you look at this identity wheel here, where do you find yourself on this wheel? Where are you? What's your intersections on this wheel? Where do you fall on this wheel? And you can put it in the chat as we discuss where we fall within the intersections of this identity wheel. Okay, what levels of education? So are you graduate level, master's levels? What levels of education? What's your gender? What is your race? What is your work background? Were you raised in a single parent household? Were you raised in a marital household? Are you Christian? Are you Jewish? Are you Muslim? Are you Buddhist? What is your religious background? What is your social economic status? All of those are the intersections of your identity. All those are the intersections of who you are. And at those intersections of your identity is where your story and your narrative lies, where your story lives. And that is where that's the lens in which you perceive most situations is from that identity wheel, right? That's where you are able to view. Some of it, you are able to see it from a different lens because you may be close to those different situations, or you may have been in certain situations where you identify with other groups that are not personal to you, but you might have been in situations where you were able to see that. So you get physically able, woman of Italian descent, a woman of Indian origin, Jewish woman. She says old, 62. You are not old. You are still well able. We have working class. We have doctorate level, Black female, married, parent, two-parent household, and Jewish household. Yes, all of those are the intersections of who you are. Okay. And so when you are working with students of trauma, they may not have some of the same characteristics or features that you identify with. So sometimes some of their trauma or some of their identity does not relate or correlate with some of your belief systems. And in those opportunities, we have to put our lenses to a side and start to try to connect with our students. So as we go into the next slide, we're going to answer a few questions, right? So let's talk. What identities do you think about most often when you are working daily? What identities do you think about least often? What identities would you like to learn more about? What identities have the strongest effect on how you perceive yourself? And what identities have the greatest effect on how others perceive you? So think about that. Drop your answers in the chat. What identities do you think about most often? I know for me, I think about being a woman most often. I think about being a mother often. Yes, Dr. Amira, being a Black woman, you think about that often. Yes, a woman and a mother. Yes, yes, yes. A female and a mom. Yes, yes. And when you look at it through that lens, sometimes it has you to question some of the interactions in which you are dealing with, right? We all have stories of sometimes being mistreated in our different identities that we have sat in situations where I know as a woman, sometimes a man gets treated differently than I get treated. And so when I look at that, I think of that intersection of those inequities between the two genders. Being a female and mother and wife. Yes, yes, yes. Being a female, Latina, and an immigrant. Yes, yes. Able-bodied and neurotypical. Yes, yes, yes. Great conversation. Great conversation. So now, as we transition to the next slide, I want you to think about these two questions. Now, what identities have the strongest effect on how you perceive students? So as a Black woman, or as an Italian woman, or as a mother, what about that identity has the strongest effect on how you perceive students? What identities have the greatest effect on how others perceive your students? I know for me, I tell my students regularly, I am a Black mom first. That's how I show up to work, as a Black mom to my students. And they know that I'm going to come and I'm going to mother every situation. I'm going to be the mother of every situation. So what identity has the strongest effect on how you perceive students? What identities have the greatest effect on how others perceive your students? Yes, I see all students through the lens of a mother first. Yes. Can see the language learners as both the struggles and the strengths. Yes, yes. Individual needs of students. Yes, I agree. I agree. Miss Amy, you were going to say something? Okay. All righty. As a mom who raised kids with disabilities, yes, that's a valuable lens to see our students, our children through. Yes. Now, what identities have the greatest effect on how others perceive our students? So as the supervisor of student support services, I oversee the alternative education program. And oftentimes, my babies are viewed as bad. I don't like that categorization. My children are not bad, right? And so sometimes people feel as though when they're in alternative education, they are bad kids. And that is the lens in which they perceive them as bad kids. That is the label that they receive. And so I asked the question, the big question for today, is it bad behavior or is it a response to trauma? Is it bad behavior or is it a trauma response? Alternative education, we have to change the narrative of alternative education as being schools for bad kids. They learn differently, they respond differently, but is it bad behavior or is it a trauma response? Yes, forecast the brilliance and abilities of our students, not their disabilities or maladaptive behavior. Absolutely, absolutely. Because many of those behaviors are what corporations are seeking every day, those outside thinkers and those assertive personalities that are very vocal and creative. They're looking for those at companies like Google and Microsoft. All right, so as we move forward, let's look at a couple of quotes, right? Words are how we think. Stories are how we link. So when we say that students are bad, what are their stories? What are the bridges of their stories that they are trying to share with us? Because we all have stories to tell, whether we whisper them or yell. We all have stories. So what are those stories that our children and our students are trying to convey to us? And this is my favorite. There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. And so as students sometimes don't have the words, it builds up a frustration. And they don't know how to articulate it. So they have a frustration. So sometimes they yell, sometimes they throw tantrums. But what greater agony is having a story that you cannot tell. As we move forward, I want you to remember everyone has a story. So as schools, oftentimes we look at the data of students, their attendance rate, we look at their academic proficiency, their reading and math proficiency. I know here in Illinois, our summative designation data was just released today, and all of the educators and administrators statewide are looking at the data. But what is the story behind the data? Every student has a story. So as we move forward, who am I, right? So I have a story. As I sit here before you and I sit in this seat, I identify as a Black woman, a mother of 4 children. I'm currently a doctoral candidate with University of Phoenix, but I was not always this student. In fact, when I graduated from high school, I graduated with a 1.67 GPA. As a teen mother, who my high school principal told me that I was destined to be on welfare, a dropout on welfare. And so I tell you that story because sometimes as educators, we have the habit of projecting or trying to predetermine students' outcome because of behaviors that we consider not normal or maladaptive, or behaviors that are classified as bad. Yes, I would classify myself as a behavior problem. However, that same behavior problem that I was in high school turned out to actually be an advocate for children, an advocate for justice for children. So that might have been maladaptive in high school because they wanted me to comply and conform. But now as an adult, I am an equity warrior. I break barriers of oppression for our students on all levels and tiers. So as I sit here before you, I want you to understand where your seat is at the table, understand who you are in your various different roles across this nation, and step to that plate and that seat at the table and advocate for our students who cannot vocalize their stories. So as we go into our second point for today, it's all about the culture, right? Fostering cultures of acceptance. I bring to you a young man, Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick Lamar is one of my favorite musical artists, right? He is a rapper and he is a creative, but when he was in school, nobody really viewed him as such. He moved from Chicago, Illinois to Compton, and he was moving to escape violence, a melee of violence in Chicago. And while he was in high school, he learned about his skill in music, and he actually went to school with Dr. Dre. So Kendrick Lamar, in one of his quotes, he states, "Once I looked into the mirror and decided this is who I am, and I'm not scared of who I am, and I'm not scared of that I can't be like you, and I'm good with just doing me, that's when I found myself as a man." How many of our students are navigating those waters of identifying who they are? And how many of our cultures accept them for who they are? How many of our school cultures are trying to make them fit into the boxes or the narratives that we're trying to create for them, rather than just helping them to see themselves in whichever way they show up in their authentic selves, and helping them to be the best version of themselves? So as we talk about fostering cultures of acceptance, when we go into the next slides, I want you to remember, great teachers and educators, they focus on connections, not compliance. It's crazy how sometimes we try to get kids to comply to rules and expectations that are not the cultural norms. We have to help our students use their voice and teach them how to have collaborative and connection skills that are able to transition them into their civic responsibilities and roles. But we often try to indoctrinate them with a mindset of compliance and conformity and control. when we need to teach them how to use their voice. So how do we foster acceptance and a culture of acceptance? So I'm gonna tell you the story. If you go to the next slide, I'm gonna tell you a story about a young man that was actually born, biologically is born female. However, he identifies as male and made the transition to being a male last year. Identifies as he and him are his pronouns. However, it has caused a very tumultuous learning environment in the high school setting because the cultural norms are very Christian valued. So how would a child feel growing up not recognizing themselves as being female, but actually as male? And then at school, you're trying to make this transition and nobody is accepting you as being that. And people keep messing your name up and calling you by your female name versus the name that you selected for yourself. And they keep calling you she and not he and him. Naturally, that causes a child to be frustrated. Well, this is the story of a student that I'm very familiar with, and I call him E-Dog. He is an amazing scholar. He has a very creative mindset, as well as he wants to be a police officer when he grows up. But I created an atmosphere here where he is accepted. He goes to the boys' bathroom. He dresses as a boy, call him by his gender pronouns, and there is no issue. He chooses to come to the alternative school rather than attend the high school. He is not bad. He just chooses to be someplace where he is accepted. How would our attendance increase if students chose to go to schools where they felt accepted? How would our attendance data transform and change? As the former principal of the junior high school here in Kankakee, I created two very different atmospheres in our school. I had the office where students who had behavior challenges, they got the opportunity to see their assistant principals. I also had the dean of restorative justice, and then I had the counseling or the center for the calming center for our students who needed that moment when they had anxiety or they felt some kind of way, as they say, where they had their calming space. Many of our students need spaces where they can release that tension and that stress and that steam so that they can re-engage into the learning. So as I fostered that culture of acceptance at the junior high school, many of our students, when they realized that they were having a bad moment in class where somebody might be calling out their names, rather than get into a fight, rather than punch that kid in the face, let me go to the Calm Care Center to de-escalate. Let me reach out to the SEL coaches to de-escalate and have a mediation and a conversation with the Dean of Restorative Justice. Fostering those cultures of acceptance helps our students to be able to have those pivotal conversations and to advocate for themselves rather than always get into fights or altercations or moments of aggression. Yes, yes, yes. If you have questions, please drop them in the chat. Okay, let's keep going because I want to make sure that I have time to address all of the questions. So some strategies for fostering cultures of acceptance: affinity groups and diversity spaces, creating those kind of groups where students are able to engage, like LGBTQIA groups, groups for our Latina and Latino Americans, celebrations and school spirit. Sometimes our students lack the fun. I don't know why or how or when. We sucked all of the fun out of school, but yes, having school spirit and celebrations, and not just for athletics, but for academics as well. current student pictures posted around your school so they can see themselves in their learning spaces. Displays of student work, not just of art. Which is recently in our Calm Care Center at the junior high school, the art, all of our art students made a mural to put in the Calm Care Center. In the windows of all of the classrooms, we have student work posted. Also, play music during unstructured time. So during lunch, sometimes all the noise and the chatter of lunchtime drives you crazy as adults. However, if you play music, it drowns out the noise and it keeps the conversations at a conversational level, and it makes the transition from lunch to class smooth and subtle and calming at the same time. Normalize mindfulness and meditation spaces. Like I explained, we have a Calm Care Center at the junior high school. Here at the Alternative Education, we have a workout room that is like the best ever. It's like almost like my mini Planet Fitness. We have a yoga room, and we also have our Calm Care mediation and social work room. So we have all of these spaces for our students when they need to de-escalate and de-stress and calm down. They have those opportunities. So we normalize that where they can take a brain break in the middle of their lesson and engage in that and then return to learning. So here are a few pictures that I want to share with you. And as I share these pictures of some of our groups, this is our Dads on Deck group, where we have male mentors from the community work with our young men and give them life lessons around, that transition from boys to men. We also have our student council that represents all of the students across the school, and they gave voice to some of the school policies and activities at the school. And you'll be surprised when you allow the students to have voice in some of the policies and procedures at your school level, how they can help you to change the culture, how they can help you to change the spaces. Our student council president, her name is Essence Talley. And I'm going to share this presentation with you where you'll be able to click on the graduation link. She gave a powerful and dynamic story, and she's right there next to Mr. Graves in that middle picture there. But Essence gave the story of when she came to the junior high school as an 8th grader, she was homeless. She was living in a hotel. And she gave this story during her graduation speech. And she would join clubs after school as a way for her not to return back to the hotel, but in fact, as a way for her to stay at school a little bit longer and to get her work done. I did not know that Essence was trying to find a way of escape. She never really shared that until later on in her school year journey. But she became the president of the student council. She was a fierce advocate for equity and justice in the junior high school, and she really advocated on the behalf of her peers. She shared that one day when she was running for student council president, she shared how she was really down on herself because she was scared that nobody would like her because it was her first year in the junior high school, but she did it anyway, and she won. She overcame her fear and she won. And it was she said it was her best year ever at the junior high. Now they have moved to Atlanta, and she's going to school in Atlanta, Georgia now. But she did all of the high school plays, all the junior high school plays. She ran track. She was just a ball of fire and a wonderful student council president. So let's talk about engaging in cultural representation, right? Sometimes we have policies at schools where we don't allow our students to recognize themselves. I remember reading a news article from New York where a high school principal I guess shunned a student for doing a little dance at graduation. We try to make pomp and circumstance and graduation so strict and orderly that we take the culture and the fun out of it, right? Well, yes, we do have rules and we do need to have order, but at the same time, I believe that cultural representation should be a part of all of our ceremonies. From our award ceremonies to graduation, we should be able to see the cultural representation of all of our students. Because that helps them to connect and identify with the school. That helps them know that they belong to the school. They are a member of the organization and not just a student that attends the school. So it's a difference between attending a school and belonging to the school. So as we move forward, that came from actually listening to our students. So listen to the student council. I was able to hear some of their concerns in regards to what was going on in the school culture. And that's why I asked the question earlier about, are students bad or are they just responding to trauma? Sometimes when our students get frustrated, I had a student who, he got into this power struggle with his teacher about wearing his hood on his head. And I didn't understand why he was so frustrated. I didn't understand why it was so, why the teacher was so concerned about his hood being on his head. I was trying to understand the entire situation, but he got so frustrated, he walked out the classroom and he was getting ready to walk out the school. And I said, okay, do you mind if I walk with you? And he said, sure. I said, okay. So we walking and he's walking out the building and we're walking down the street together because he just wanted to walk. He was mad. And as we're walking, I asked him a question. I said, what happened? And he goes on a tangent about, she keeps getting mad at me about wearing my hood. And I don't want to take my hood off. I want to keep my hood on my head because my hair is not cut. I don't feel like I look good. And the kids keep making fun of me because I have my hood on because of my hair is not cut. And I don't like being talked about because it makes me feel bad. And my mom can't afford for me to get my hair cut right now. And so I don't know what else to do. So I'll keep my head on my hood on my head rather than take it off. I said, okay, I hear you. I understand. Can you tell me more about what, why you feel the way that you feel? And as he continued to express himself, I'm navigating him up the block and around the block and back towards the school. And we're just walking together. And the more he walked, the more he was able to articulate and express how he was feeling and how that made him feel targeted in the classroom and how he felt bullied and how he didn't feel like he belongs in the classroom. And that's why I say we have to sometimes evaluate some of our rules and policies to see if they're equitable and if they're fair for students. He wasn't hurting anybody by wearing his hood, right? He wasn't not engaging in the learning, but because the teacher wanted him not to wear his hood, it became a problem. Why? Right? So when we're engaging with students, we have to look beyond just the action and the behavior and look to see what is the real thing that is transpiring with that student. What's really going on? I said, well, baby, if you just need a haircut, I can go get you a haircut. We can have the barber come up to the school later on today. And that's all he really wanted. But we would have known that need had the teacher just had a relationship and a conversation with them and said, hey, is there a way we can have a barber, cut some of our students' heads? I wouldn't have a problem with that at all. But instead, she chose to have an argument and a power struggle with the student over a hood that could have really got really bad really fast. The next strategy that I want to share with you is exposure to opportunity. Exposure to opportunity. It's critical for our students to be exposed to various different opportunities. It doesn't matter. So when I said earlier about where we come from, right? A lot of our students don't come from households where their parents have gone to college. So we might be the first adult that they've seen that has gone to college or advanced degrees. We may be the first person that they've seen or that they know of that occupies a professional occupation. So we have to take them to different opportunities that go beyond just the school environment. One of the first things we did here at the alternative education at Avis Hub, we took our students on a field trip to Feed My Starving Children. I wanted them to realize that even though you come from a condition of poverty, even though you come from situations of poverty, and you may be in a community or this state, there are communities that have experienced poverty at various different levels. There are countries and communities that are ravaged by poverty. And so once they were able to engage in that activity, once they were able to see that, it really opened their eyes to realize how truly blessed they really are, rather than to be down on themselves so much. And what that did was when they came back to the school, several of them were like, hey, Miss Harris, I want to get a job. How do I go about getting a job? Can you help me find a job? Now, I was shocked. I was like, sure, you want a job? Not a problem. I took some to Walmart. Like, I literally got the school van. We drove to Walmart. We did the applications. I took them back for their interviews, and they are working right now at Walmart. Some of them I took to McDonald's and Wendy's. And I told them that if you go to Wendy's, I need the 4 for $4. I need that. That's my special order for me. Make sure you bring me back a 4 for $4. But I helped them get jobs across the city of Kankakee so they could give back to their homes as well as to their community. I also created spaces for them to express their art and their love for music and writing and their emotions. So sometimes doing an essay is not the project that they want to do. They may want to create a rap. They may want to create a poem. They may want to create a music video or a video. But giving them the option and the choices on how they want to present the information was the key piece and the key factor to them completing the assignment. Again, mindfulness, yoga, martial arts are all opportunities. We actually have a partnership as a district with a boxing club here in the community where we take kids after school after 4 p.m. to the boxing club to practice the art of boxing. Yes, our fighters, instead of suspending them for 10 plus days, we take them to boxing and get them boxing lessons so they can learn the discipline and the art behind boxing rather than just fight. So we also give them opportunities about advocacy. So, you know, those kids that always have something to say, they're talking back. And for some, they would classify them as being disrespectful. As we go forward, we did a social justice learning lab with the Illinois Department of Human Services, AmeriCorps, and the Kankakee State's Attorney. We partnered with them last year, and we are partnering with them again this year. It was an amazing opportunity where over 200 of our 8th grade students at the junior high school got the opportunity to study the case of Emmett Till and to argue it at the Kankakee courthouse. We had 3 courtrooms, 3 judges, and it created a partnership not just with social service agencies, but also with the justice program at the courthouse. So now the judges at the courthouse recognize these students. Now the state's attorney recognizes these students, and they see them as humans and not just as case numbers if they happen to are seen by them in the future. So it humanized the whole process along the way, and the students got the chance to see actual career opportunities in the justice field. They got the chance to see that it's more than just judges and lawyers. You have paralegals, you have clerks, you have bailiffs, you have the court reporters, you have social advocates. They realize that there are a myriad of different professions that relate to the justice program that you may be able to engage in. And so that was a wonderful opportunity for our students, and we have expanded it beyond just the junior high school. Now it'll be the junior high, the high school, and also another, and Bradley Bourbonnais High School as well. And here go a few pictures of these opportunities of our students as they engage. They had a blast every time they packed a box at Feed My Starving Children. I danced and sang a song, and they hated every bit of me singing, and they thought my dancing was funny, but they had a blast at Feed My Starving Children. I had to show them the spirit of, teamwork and collaboration. Teamwork makes the dream work. As we move forward, we see them at the courthouse and arguing the case, and the lawyers that are working with them. They even created posters, because during the real trial of Emmett Till, you had the people outside the court protesting. So we had protesters, we had court reporters, and they actually really enjoyed it. The state's attorney general, who's top center, he actually came and taught them how to argue a court case and how to do their opening and closing arguments. And then he has several lawyers and paralegals work with them in different teams and formulate their arguments. So it became a real wonderful experience for them. As I come to an end, I want to talk about restorative practices. So we have to implore the restorer. So we must think about discipline in a restorative approach. If we classify all things that our students do as being bad, and we discipline and we suspend them, then they miss out on the opportunity to receive such exposure and opportunities for learning. We have to remember that some things that we feel that students should come to the table with, they have not been taught. So we have to create these restorative opportunities so our students can learn different behaviors. So look at our different policies. I'm the zero tolerance mindset. That's a thing of the past. We cannot have those kind of policies anymore because they are inequitable. And so I grew up in an era with zero tolerance policies. So if you talk back to a teacher, you were automatically suspended. If you were defiant or disrespectful, you were automatically removed from the classroom. That's not what we should be practicing in 2023. In 2023, we should be teaching our students how to advocate for themselves and to be heard. We also have to provide opportunities for them to build relationships. So as I mentioned earlier, I had a dean of restorative justice, and she provided opportunities for our students to call for the students that they had issues with to have mediation sessions and to have conversations. And so the way that I strategically did this to shift that mindset at the junior high school, and how I'm doing it district-wide now for Kankakee, is through training and professional development. This is actually my 4th training for today. All day today, I've been working with teachers, kindergarten through 12th grade today, and our social service providers in regards to equitable and restorative practices, how to have restorative conversations, and how to do conflict mediation. So I want to share some resources with you as I come to an end, and I want to be able to hear your questions. Some resources that I found valuable. One of the books that is real valuable about sharing stories, Punished for Dreaming. This is a great book that speaks to the different systems that have caused so many different, how the various different school reform policies has caused systems of oppression for our communities of color. Don't Suspend Me is a great book in regards to tangible strategies for alternatives to discipline and suspension, from doing research projects and pamphlets on bullying and prevention, and publications on preventing bullying. It had just a myriad of different tools in regards to dealing with school discipline that are alternatives to suspension. And then again, for adults, how do we ground ourselves? We can't pour from empty buckets, and we cannot address unregulated students if we are unregulated adults. So Onward is a book about cultivating emotional resilience in our educators, because most times, like I was sharing about the teacher with the student with the hood, she got into a power struggle with the student when she really didn't have to, right? But if our educators are not well emotionally, if our educators are not, if they're on fumes, then they don't see where they could possibly how they call some of the triggers, how they call some of the trauma, how they call some of the issues in their own classrooms. And so this book Onward and the workbook, you have to get the workbook. If you get the regular book, you have to get the workbook alongside it, because it is an amazing tool and resource to help you with creating educators who are resilient, emotionally resilient. Some articles that I encourage that you read. Decarceration begins with school discipline reform. If we want to decrease the amount of students who go, who are identified for the prison pipeline, it starts first with the way that we address some of the behaviors in school, teaching our students how to vocalize and how to advocate for themselves. The next article is about responding to trauma in our classrooms, and it gives real tangible strategies in regards to responding to trauma in the classroom. All right, and so as we come to an end, here's a few bits of information about me and how you can reach out to me. This is my email address, Stephanie Harris at ksd111.org, and you can find me on Twitter, or as it's known now as X, at AllAboutKids8. Are there any questions for me at this time? Any questions?
Yes, Stephanie. Firstly, thank you so much again for taking the time to do this with us. Every time I hear you, it's amazing. Thank you so much. There is a question over here from Kimberly. She's asking, hi, I'm a behavior specialist for a district in Texas. Do you have any suggestions for getting reluctant teachers on board with these practices?
Yes, great question, great question. And so it's like an onion. In order to peel back the layers of mindsets, it starts with first professional development. So creating the system is one part at the district level, but once the system has been created, the next part is to provide the supports and the structures and supports for teachers to be successful. So I will look at the practices that you have in place and then provide those supports for the teachers, whether it is on the job training where you walk alongside them as educators to help them to see some of those practices, or whether it is building-wide professional development to help them to be able to see. So I have done both over the last month. I've walked alongside a teacher so she could see some of those inequitable practices. She didn't realize it at first, but I helped her to see those. And then I also provide on building-wide and district-wide trainings.
Before you move to if anyone has another question, please put it in the chat or you can unmute. But I just also wanted to ask, Stephanie, are there some specific trainings that you can think of when you're thinking about the trainings that you have done with teachers that have been helpful?
Yes. So Champs, Randy Spriggs has a wonderful book, Champs Proactive Response to Classroom Management. Oftentimes we assume that students know certain behaviors, but Champs actually teaches our teachers how to explain exactly what they expect from students from beginning to end, what their conversational level should be, how they should use their hands, what the activity should look like, what the movement should look like while they're doing the activity, and what participation should look like. And so that's what CHAMP stands for. And then it also teaches about structuring your classroom in a way in which students are successful throughout the process. It's called the STOIC model. And so I highly recommend and encourage the CHAMPS management plan. It has been used nationwide. Oftentimes when I speak on CHAMPS, I explain that it's not something that you just throw at people, but you have to take them through the training so they understand how to implement it successfully, which I find is also another challenge that we have nationwide, is implementing things successfully.
And just to reiterate, it's CHAMPS, all capital, right? CHAMPS, yes. If someone's looking for it.
Yes.
I just wanted to point out there were a couple of this. The last slide I think that you had for it had Learning for Justice symbol on the side. I just wanted to point out it's a free resource. It's online. Please look them up. They have a lot of good lessons and articles and things that you can, resources that you can look and find around this and other topics.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Learning for Justice is an amazing website and resource and articles. Just to have like think tanks and discussions around the articles, especially around tough topics, that helps teachers to unpack their thinking around certain topics. Just having free think tanks around those different articles and is amazing. Just a wonderful resource. Are there any more questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
And thank you so much for all of the resources, experiences, synopsis of what you've been doing. And I heard a lot of it having to do with the teachers and the children. I'm wondering if you, or really anybody here, has any ideas of how to create those at the system level for the district? What needs to happen at the systems level to be able to effectively do what you're trying to do?
Great question, right? So I've said when you look through your discipline plans and your discipline models, and you look through the manual, when you read over the policy from the board policy, how is that articulated into your student discipline code or your student code of conduct? And then when you look at your student code of conduct, look at it from various different lenses, right? If you are a parent, how would you read this? Is this equitable? Is it only targeting or identifying certain students? If it's only targeting and identifying certain students, then is it fair? Does it need to be changed? For example, the student with the hood, right? We have a dress code policy in our district, but wearing a hood is not a part of that student code of conduct. So when you look at the discipline plan, you see from the board to the student code of conduct, you don't have an issue with wearing the hood. However, what she would classify you under is under being disrespectful and defiant because he wasn't listening. So then we have to unpack the language of what is disrespect, what is being defiant. And when I worked in Decatur, this was something that we unpacked as the discipline committee in Decatur, because you don't realize what somebody's interpretation of disrespect may be. For somebody, disrespect may be talking back. For others, it may be cussing you out. That's a wide range, right, of disrespect. Two different dynamics. But you don't know what the teacher views as disrespect, and it can be very misleading in the language. So I would say, eliminate some of that vague language, review it, and unpack some of that vague language that may over-identify and target our students.
Thank you.
Anyone else around that question, around some of the systems that you've created? In Pittsburgh, right, we do not have the same operational definition, and it leaves too much room for interpretation.
Absolutely. And then you see students getting suspended for something that they classify as disrespectful, and it's not equitable. Same with dress code policies, right? You have very gender-driven dress code policies. Boys can walk around showing their belly buttons, but girls can't, right? Or a guy can walk around with spaghetti straps on, but a girl can't. It's those gender inequitable dress code policies. So just trying to find gender-neutral dress code policies that are fair for all students. So those are all things that when we look at it from the systems level, looking at it, how it trickles down to the classroom.
Love it. So thinking about it from looking at all the policies that you have as a district, as a city, to look at it from the different lenses of people who those policies are impacting. From the parents' perspective, thinking about it from students, thinking about it from various student bodies, right? Looking at their identities and figuring out how they might read it, looking at it from that lens and from their lens.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right.
All right, Lauren, do you want to open up our last few slides. And again, if there are people who want to ask Stephanie a question, please continue to do so. And Stephanie has been kind enough to share her information, and she will share the slides too. There's something that Dr. Amira is talking about. Going back.
Can you
to
see
your
these slides?
Yeah.
Not yet. Going back to your earlier statement about the difference between students attending school and feeling welcome, or feeling welcome. Do you have any specific ideas for where to start? I love that statement too, Dr. Amira. Stephanie, any ideas, specific ideas from where to start? And Lauren, we don't see the slides.
So two things. So the first thing is walk through your school environment as a student. Like if you were a student and you walked into your school, how would you feel? What would you feel? What would be the areas and how would it make you feel walking through that environment? When I walk into most schools or some schools, sometimes it feels very cold, very institutional, right? You don't see anything on the wall. The school looks very sanitized and sterile, I should say. Very, very. So how do you bring the vibrance and the fun and the energy back to school? Compare it to this. When you are in kindergarten and you go to a kindergarten classroom, it has all of the colors, all of the sparkles, all of the rainbows and the unicorns, right? But when you go into the high school or you go into a junior high classroom, it's like brick walls and paint and nothing colorful whatsoever. So how do you bring that same energy from kindergarten to a junior high or a high school setting? And so bringing that vibrance and celebration and artwork and creativity to all the various different levels of education in those environments. Also creating the opportunity to have those conversations with students and ask them from their perspective, how can I make this environment more welcoming? And just don't identify students that look like you. Identify students who don't look like you or don't have the same ideas as you or that has a various different perspective. Ask them, how can I make this environment more welcoming? What could I add or what can I take away? What would make it more lively? And they will tell you the truth. They will give you the God honest truth, and you will probably not be happy with it, but listen intently, and then just get quiet and say, like I say, active listening. Tell me more. Tell me more. Tell me more about what you're thinking and why.
And that's the other one that I really love, Stephanie, when you talk about tell me more and how that simple question can bring out so much in a conversation. So with that, I want to thank you. Like Stephanie mentioned earlier, we have a podcast that we did with Stephanie earlier this month, our CollabCast, and it's posted on our website and other ways that we have communicated that with you. Stephanie talks about her own personal journey as well as then connects it to her professional journey and the work that she is doing, and then the work that Kankakee is doing as a district. For any of our upcoming Urban Collaborative events, we have a CollabCast coming, a CollabTalk coming up in November around literacy, mentorship, and the power of community and families. That's the date for it. You can go in and register at urbancollaborative.org. For membership, if any of you don't know if your district is a member or if you would like to become members, please just email us at urbancollaborative@asu.edu. The next slide tells us about ways that you can, in social media, join us. It tells you about our other resources that we have for our Collab PDs and other CollabCasts that we've had before. Stephanie's CollabCast is there, as well as Collab PDs from other people and other CollabCasts that we've done. You can go into each of those places to find those. And then the last slide is around social media and ways for you to learn about other things that are happening with Urban Collaborative and some of the work that our districts are sharing, just like Stephanie has shared and others have shared about the work that you're doing. We would love to hear from all of you who are here right now. If there's work like Stephanie that you would like to, that you are feeling all excited about and you want to share with us and other district members, reach out to us, because this is the only way that as we build our community that we continue to learn. With that, thank you so much, Stephanie, and all of you. Thank you for your time. Reach out to us with any questions you have, and reach out to Stephanie with any questions that you may have of her. We will pause, we will stop our recording, but we are here